Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ali Brown Coaching Podcast. Today I'm with Chris Smith,
Great to hear.
and so thank you for finding the time. I know it's currently that weird period between Christmas and New Year's, isn't it?
To be honest, it's nice to find time away from eating chocolate and watching crap on telly. So
Could have bought some chocolate. We could have eaten.
we could have done. Yeah. Chocolate with Ali Brown.
Yeah, you could just listen to us eat.
Yeah.
You asked me to coach you.
Yeah.
I guess maybe just over a
Just
year
over
ago.
a year, yeah.
But let's kind of just go straight into it and go back, because I know that you didn't really used to always be into sport, did you?
No, I mean when I was, I grew up in the northeast, and like most lads there, I wanted to play football for Newcastle. But and those who've seen me in the sort of transition area will know, I've got no coordination or balance whatsoever, which makes sort of playing football quite challenging. I just lost the interest, to be honest. Because I went to the sort of school where if you were great at sport, you were great otherwise. You could just come stand in the corner of the muddy field and just sort of kick a ball around, and never really got into it. Did a bit of university, but not really. I played a bit of rugby, and then I broke my finger and stopped doing that. So I was always a bit sort of clumsy and not quite getting anywhere. And spent my early 20s sort of drinking beer, smoking cigarettes, and eating crap, really, which was quite fun for the time, but it's not a great lifestyle. And really got into getting fit when I moved for a job, and I moved to live in Worcester. Just randomly, because my boss at the time lived in Worcester, and these were in the days pre-internet where if you wanted to buy a house, you had to go and buy a newspaper with a central pull-out of houses in it.
Jeez, I remember when they did those.
Which, for our listeners under 25, we scratch and say, "What's he talking about?"
What's a newspaper, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. It just happened there. I'd moved to a new place, didn't know anybody, and the local paper just happened to be talking about that Purdisville had just been refurbished.
Oh, so that was 2017 that reopened.
No. This was actually back in the 90s.
First time.
This is proper old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is proper old. I was 26, 27 then. I'm 56 now, so it gives you a fair feel for it.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll go and do that, and it was also my first and joined the gym there. And it was my first real introduction to high quality coaching, because I met a guy there who was doing the inductions and coaching. It's a guy called Mark Scriven, who's currently director of fitness and conditioning at the university. And he just sort of engaged and committed to sort of helping me. And I look back on some of my first programs now, and the first target was to see how far could I run on the treadmill in 10 minutes. And I think the first time I did it, I think I got 832 meters.
Okay.
And I remember about 6 weeks later was the first time that I managed to run for the full 10 minutes on the treadmill. So it gives you an idea of the level I started on. But it gave me an introduction to a lot of people and a social life. I met my wife there. But having a guy who coached me who didn't mind where I started from, engaged and invested, but had a very structured training program to follow, made a real difference. And so it was a pattern I followed. So I got into that. I did some stuff which was back in the days was called ultra fit competitions. It was like CrossFit, but without the advertising.
Right. So before it became popular,
very old school stuff. And there's some quite sort of random competitions around the area, and I actually managed to win the Worcester one. So I appeared once in the Worcester News as Worcester's fittest man, which is my sporting highlight.
Where have you got it framed somewhere?
I've actually got the photograph at home. My mother-in-law dug it out, and had a lot more hair than I've got now. But did that. Did a lot of weights and that sort of stuff. Got quite fit. Enjoyed doing circuit training. And then my wife got into the London Marathon, so I started to do a bit of running with her. I'm never been a natural runner. And started to do a bit of that as well. And it just happened, work changes, and I was really busy, so I couldn't get into the gym, but I could get the running done. So I was doing quite a lot of that, and then I was okay on the flat, but a bit bored with it. Then just started to find some slightly random things to go and do. So anything with mud or hills or that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later, because you love that, don't you?
Love that sort of stuff. I did something, you may or may not have heard of Tough Guy. So Tough Guy was the precursor to Tough Mudder. Guy called Billy Wilson ran a donkey sanctuary in Wolverhampton and did this obstacle course where you'd go there.
That's where it originated.
That's where it started, yeah. In January, so you'd break the ice before going through the water. And interestingly, the guy who actually founded Tough Mudder did his MBA dissertation on obstacle racing and actually based it on Billy Wilson's setup.
Oh, brilliant.
And the mutterings are he got a large check when he sued them for breach of copyright. So there's an interesting backstory there. But it was, again, I wasn't desperately fast, but I just enjoyed doing different things. And again, I was just been really lucky with, I had friends I'd trained with and they sort of helped drag me along and get me programs and stuff. And I'd just go and find different things. As you know, I quite like the different stuff. And then I think I was just getting that sort of age, having turned sort of early mid-40s. And decided I wasn't going to get a leather jacket and a motorbike.
But there's still time if you want a crisis.
There is still time for midlife crisis, but I'll hold that back a bit. Decided that I was busy with work. I was away a lot in hotels and stuff, but I was just getting some little niggling running injuries. I was getting a bit dull with it. And then a mate of mine entered a triathlon for a bit of a laugh, and said he quite enjoyed it to have a go. So I did my first one. Using a hybrid, but just a hybrid sit up and beg sort of thing, which I'd bought to do the Three Peaks yacht race, which is a different thing I'll talk about in a bit maybe. And did that in Droitwich, and absolutely loved it. I mean, I was doing rubbish breaststroke. I had no idea in transition. I think transition was about 7 minutes because I'd left all my shoes and stuff in the bag and that sort of stuff, so I had to get it all out. It was absolutely lashing it down.
That's a good thing you left them in the bag then.
Yeah, well, it would have been if I could have found them. But you learn these tricks about, if you've got wet socks, talcum powder is a good thing to have. But, and it's just an interesting experience to try something different. So I did a couple of those, and then he borrowed a bike. Then I bought an old bike off eBay, and it then became sort of a major part of it because I did 2 or 3 triathlons a year, just typically small sprint ones, occasionally Olympic, just to try it. But it was more for the interest in doing it.
That's kind of interesting because I coach people from all ability levels, and I don't care how fast or slow they are. In a way, I care about are they, do I like them? Are they all right as a person? And do I think I can improve them regardless of where they're at?
Yeah.
And if that's yes, then we're all good. Because sometimes it can get a bit focused on, but how fast are you though? And I'm like, I kind of withdrew myself from that complete thinking, to be honest.
I mean, I think if you're right at the top end or you try to be competitive, I can sort of get it a wee bit, but 85 to 90% of us there aren't. Even if we'd like to believe
probably
it.
a high percentage.
It could even be, but I'm there very much to see what I can do for myself and enjoy it. I don't want to be the guy next to me whose back wheel costs more than my bike.
No.
And he's there with his couple of grand solid wheel, then telling you how he had 12 pints in a curry last night. And I'm saying I don't really get it.
No, but the thing is that mentality will get the best out of you anyway. So by not thinking about like, I need to be this fast, whatever, and just going, I just want to enjoy it, I just want to do what I want to do, I like doing the difficult races, I like pushing myself, you're going to get the best out of yourself anyway, and that's kind of nice.
No, very much so. I mean, the reality is, I've come to terms with the fact that 56, I'm not going to be a professional athlete at some point in the near future.
Yeah, likewise with nearly all of us.
and so it really is, how do I make it fun, and how do I make it interesting, and how do I fit it in with my family life and with work life and all the other stuff?
Yeah.
And I think I think we're living a golden age for people who want to take part in sport. To be honest, because there's so many opportunities out there, and they're not all stupid prices. You can go to Ironman and spend a small fortune for something. You can go to a hill in Wales, stick £5 in the tin, go up and down the hill, and come back with a bottle of beer. We're living that sort of golden age, and I just wanted to really embrace that. But coaching helps, because I think what really struck me about Tri in particular is it's a shed load more technical than you think. And it's actually how you put the bits together and trade the bits off is the real skill set, rather than, if I get dead good at running and dead good at biking and dead good at swimming, it'll sort of happen. And it doesn't work that way.
No, this is the most, I find it's the most common misconception in the sport, is that a lot of, especially when I looked a lot into how the national governing bodies and the federations kind of develop sport through. And they always say you should go and join a swimming club, go and join a cycling club, and go and join a running club. But the problem with that is if you swim like you can't swim like a swimmer, bike like a biker, and run like a runner in a triathlon, because you know this from what we've done.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite work, because a swimmer finishes the race, hops out the pool and goes and has a hot shower and gets some food. Hasn't got to get on the bike, hasn't got to then run. So the triathlon is kind of the kind of light bulb moment for me was completely come at it from a different angle, from what I learned and the coaches I was kind of talking to and learning from, and don't see it as swimming, don't see it as cycling, don't see it as running. Just see it as one brand new, different sport in its own right. And then you do the three elements much differently, don't you? So there's a lot of kind of philosophy there to understand and unpick and understand why, and then how to exactly do the swimming to prepare yourself for the bike. How to then do the bike, knowing you've just done the swim, but to prepare yourself for the run. It's kind of that's the bit that it's often hard to get your head around.
And it's quite a hard balance to strike. So I guess I came to you for swimming to start off with, because I had a running background and I thought I could ride a bike. Turns out I can't, but that's another story. But my swimming really was poor. I've been doing breaststroke for the first few tries, and my daughter then taught me how to do crawl, so at least I could do crawl.
Yeah, because that's
how I came across you. Because Lenny was lifeguarding at Purdy.
Yeah,
and said, you want to improve your swimming, you want to talk to this tall guy who looks like Shaggy.
Shaggy.
I said, fair enough, and we got going through that, and I could see quite early on. I think the classic's always the first. You probably said more to me in the first two lessons than the remaining year there.
Yeah.
Because the first two lessons is where the really, really big errors are, like, point this way and that sort of stuff. And after that,
even turn from the hip
and stuff. And even whereas now you're sitting in a lesson and you may say 5-6 things, but you've got to focus on that 5-6 words all the way through, because it makes a difference. But that's how I came across it. Lenny basically saw you doing the teaching and said, well, you've always said you wanted to improve it, give it a go. So we met up at the Pershore 6:30 sessions and went from there, really. Yeah.
No, it was really interesting because after the first few sessions, she'd always then say to me, "Oh, he said he really enjoyed it. He's really liking it." It's like, I was like, "It's good to hear," because it was kind of those once the philosophy is embedded, and then the first few sessions or something, and it's like, okay, you're roughly in the right, you're on the right direction now. So it's so I could either be an idiot and carry on talking forever at you and confuse the hell out of you, or you're doing what we spoke about, and then every now and then just kind of either a reminder or like, oh, this is the next little thing, and then you slowly build on that one thing at a time, which is it's not been that long really.
That says just over a year. I mean, you still get occasional breakthrough minutes, moments. We had the other week we were saying push back all the way.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you mean actually all the way? As opposed to, oh, right. So I was going to there, but you actually meant actually all the way. Okay, fair enough.
That's the thing is swimming's really weird because, like, I'm seeing people swim from outside, outside their head, outside the pool. I'm watching I'm like a bird's eye view of them, and then I can see exactly what they're doing, and I spend most of my time just walking up and down the pool, just watching them, and going, okay, that's what they're doing now, and I know what I want them to do next, but I can't just go like a bull in a china shop, because they're just going to go, what? Well, I'm confused. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, okay, what's the most simplest, most effective way that I can put across in a few words to get them to do the next thing I want to do? So a lot of the time it's figuring that out, and then just going, Chris, wait there a minute, blah 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 blah, off you go. And then, okay, did that work? Yes, it's worked a little bit. Or no, I need to do this. Like, that's kind of like what people don't see, because a lot of people think coaches just sit there and do nothing and have a cup of coffee and just watch. But it's all in the head, isn't it? It's how do I get through to that person so they can understand?
Yeah, it is. And sometimes it's little things, and sometimes it's big things like don't forget your pull boy, which I've done a number of times. But
And I've just laughed.
Yeah. But it is, and I think of all the disciplines, it's probably the one where having someone eyes on as well as giving you a training program makes the biggest difference. I mean, the training programs really break up really good. I'm at the moment trying to push my pace a bit more, so it's forcing the pace and breaking it up and using the different tools to try different ways. And so you can get that remotely, but actually having that eyes on piece of actually, you're moving your right hand down a bit too much and that sort of stuff. And it sounds silly, but it makes a difference.
It does, yeah. It's kind of crazy, and I'm still developing and learning stuff myself. And how many lengths have I watched you guys go up and down and stuff, and the tiniest change or tweak can make the biggest difference. It's kind of crazy. So we had you said before it clicked the other week. It was last week?
It was, yeah.
Where it clicked, where you finally kind of got what it meant to push all the way back and then fling out the back.
Yeah.
Because and how that felt.
Yeah. Because I was getting there, and I thought, okay, if the pad brushes my hips, I've done a decent job there. I can go after that.
Yeah.
Then I thought, well, actually, I've got a bit more arm left still.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things which is absolutely blindingly obvious once you've done it.
But it's not, because you're in your own head, you're lying flat in the water, you're doing it, and it seems simple from the outside point of view, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing in the world.
Yeah.
So it's like it's trying to get something across to someone that they can not only understand, but then physically do and put into practice in the pool.
Yeah.
It's kind of, and then that method changes person to person because of different learning styles and things.
Yeah.
So I'm often like there with a headache at the end of it. And then if two people come to the end and I'm talking to one of them, I'll just go, don't listen to this one. You go, I'm only talking to you right now.
Yeah. Do your thing.
Yeah. Because you'll just get confused and this is for Chris or whatever. And it's interesting because then you see other coaches who don't stop talking, and it becomes, I often say, you kind of got the people who treat it more like an exercise class. Like a spin class where it's just motivation, shouty, we're doing this now, blah, blah, blah. There's a big difference between that and then like thoughtful, considered coaching.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the time people not in the sport don't see the difference between that. And so it's kind of interesting.
I think it's finding what works for you, to be honest, isn't it? Because
some people don't want the help, do they?
It's partly that. I mean, I've never struggled for motivation. I don't have a problem turning up and getting up and doing it. I like a really structured program. It helps me really fix on it because it's partly a break from a busy working life, but it means I haven't got to think about what I'm going to do, and I don't have a problem getting up and getting out. I don't mind if it's wet or it's windy or whatever else. I want to do it.
Yeah.
But being able to think of the one or two small things which are different, how I do it better. Is really, really important. So it's like when if we're running at the track, I don't need someone shouting you're doing really well.
It's annoying, isn't it?
I'm not interested. I do need to say things like, have you thought? Can you bring your knee through a bit faster, or anything like that. So it's a bit of a horses for courses. If people need a motivation, that's fine. It's different athletes, different things. But for me, it's very much about tell me the 2 or 3 things I can make a difference on, and I'll go away and work on it for a few weeks. So it's going to take a few weeks to work on it.
Yeah, and get used to it. So with the bring that forward just a little bit.
No worries.
With the I'm scared it's just going to cut out and it'll be like no.
We'll put subtitles on later.
Yeah. I'll write them all in. Maybe one day I can pay an editor to do all this for me. And with the running, because we introduced running sticks.
Yeah, actually, I thought I'd bring one of these.
Oh, you've got them.
I did because I was using them today. So they did her for 10k today, carrying 2 of these, which they look like sort of high tech sort of science things, but they're actually cigar tubes.
So those on YouTube, you're able to see this. If you're on Spotify,
this is rubbish on Spotify, by the way. But
yeah. So on Spotify, just think of a cigar tube.
Yeah.
The funny story is, I gave them to you, and you were just like, oh, interesting. and then
what do you do with these things?
And I was like, I bet you can't guess what they actually are. Yeah. And then because they're actually my coach Susie gave. I spoke about you to my coach. Yeah. I was like, I think Chris will really benefit from the running sticks because a lot of the pro athletes are using them. And I was with her in London at the time, and she had some of she had some of Brett's Brett Sutton's cigarette cases used in a bag. She just happened to have them, and she just got 2 out and just gave me them because there you go, give them to him.
Yeah, and it's weird because running carrying these, you get a lot of questions asked at the track and stuff. But today doing that 10K, particularly in the second half, where typically I would get very, very wooden. My running was like sort of bad 1980s robotic dancing. It was actually very rigid. And this really made you think about keeping that movement going, and particularly when you're flagging a little bit, held the pace out and even pushed it on a wee bit. So again, you get over yourself quite quickly and just use them. So I've used these for half iron triathlons. I've used them today. Yeah, and it's just a silly little thing, but
silly.
If it helps you correct your form and just think about something, I didn't have to pay £200 for a pair of carbon plated shoes. No, it's just
they were
couple
free
of cheap plastic things.
So this is the thing, right? So how much are these carbon plated shoes or whatever the nights are? Like we don't use them, we don't believe in them. That's another story. But they were free. Brett had to buy the cigars.
Yeah,
and
we had the pleasure out of that. And we don't encourage cigars and triathlon children.
No. But Brett's not doing it. He's just a coach. But so the thing that was free and the most simplest thing has made, in my view, an enormous difference. Because when you first came to the track, you were quite robotic and stiff. And the idea of these running sticks is you have one in each hand. You just lightly hold them. You don't grip them. You have your thumb on the top of them. And it kind of...
Yeah, it's a bit like that, really. Carry it like that. And I tend to try and keep the hand really, really loose so you don't get too tense. If you tense, you just release it, but you just keep the finger on the top and off.
Loosey-goosey.
Yeah.
And then the idea is it kind of... A lot of people get really tense in the shoulders and the arms when they're running. But it kind of, when you're holding these sticks, you relax a little bit and you actually increase the movement a little bit with your arms, and it feels more rhythmic. And I don't run with them because I'm not so stiff when I run. But I actually when I did an Ironman, half Ironman, I actually had 2 gels in my hand. I didn't want to have them both at the same time because I was just going to get stitched. But I just held them, and I was like, it kept my stomach so relaxed. Yeah. And then with about 2K to go to the finish, I thought, I'll ditch them now because I'm not going to have anywhere to put them. There's no bins near the finish area. As soon as I threw them away, it got stitched. I thought, that's really weird.
Yeah, very strange. Yeah, it is strange. It took a few weeks to get used to it, but it's definitely made a difference.
Yeah. So Susie said to me, don't say a word to him, just give him to him and get him to run. And I did. And you kind of had a glance look at me to think, are you off your rocker? What are these? Yeah. And then it kind of made sense a little bit. Yeah. And it was like, and then your running now it got a lot better, and it's still on that upward trajectory. And every time I'm like, that's looking a little bit better.
Yeah, it's noticeable. I mean, when I ran a lot, I was significantly smoother and faster, but I was doing it all the time. And physically, I was probably more able to take the load.
Yeah.
And it's take a while. I won't get back to where I was, and I'm pretty chilled with that because that was 20 years ago. But I can get more fluid and get the best out of what I've got, and that's good.
Yeah, and by not tensing and being relaxed, and you're going to be saving energy so you can go for longer in a race and not kind of
exactly.
Lots of, especially at the end of a triathlon, because
that's when you need it.
That's pretty crazy. Let's talk about, because a lot of people love. Oh, look at this race. It's super flat, PB potential. I'm going to go and tear it up. It's not raining, it's warm, it's sunny. I'm going to go as fast as I went. You're kind of the opposite. The more mountains in it, the heavier the snowstorm, you're there.
Yeah, it's always been... I've always loved being in the hills and being outdoor. And I did quite a lot of fell running for a while, which is, is probably the most low-key of sports. And I loved the fact that it is turn up, put £5 in the tin and off you go. But in any one day's race, you're there with the European champion next to you. They disappear, but it's just so unpretentious. And you get out to amazingly beautiful places. And when I was doing a lot more running, I wanted to find things which I could compete in because they were fun rather than long, flat races. I mean, I did London Marathon 3 times and a couple of things like Nottingham Half, which are really pancake flat. And even the Great North Run, which is the world's most boring half marathon, because it's like an interesting first mile, interesting last mile, in the middle 11 is like a dual carriageway between Sunderland and Newcastle.
Nice. I bet you love that.
Oh, it's just dull as anything. But I started doing the fell racing and then finding other stuff, and there's actually a whole world of just different quirky things out there, which for, by and large, not an awful lot of money and quite locally could be really good fun. So I did this with running, with fell racing, then went into adventure racing, which is for 3 days in the Lake District, trying to map read.
I like how I say trying to map read.
I mean, just in terms of quirky stories, the first one we did, we decided we're going to do it, and the website comes lots of warnings. You need good experience in the hills, and yeah, we're fine. But 2 weeks before, the guy who organised rang up and said, "Are you sure you guys know what you're doing?" Yeah, we're fine. Now, it turns out this was a thing called Dark Mountains, which was run overnight in January in the Lake District. And when we did it, there was about 4 foot of snow. And I think we should have been worried when we got the map to start off with. We couldn't find where we were on the map as the start. And then we ran down this road, convinced it was one road, and actually it was a different one, which would be okay to an extent, but actually they were like 90 degrees apart, so there's no way it could be. And then we knew we were really in trouble when we found a checkpoint, tried to pick up and found actually it was a different hill, totally the one we're supposed to be on. And so we joined the rest of actually, and that year everyone abandoned the race because it was so dangerous. But you realise actually you can stumble into some stuff. But it gave a real test for you can put yourself into some really difficult and challenging places and have great experiences out of it. And so on the back of that, because I'm never going to be fast on the flat, I don't particularly want to be, I've started looking for different things to do which are a bit more adventurous or a bit out there. In 2016, I was on holiday in the French Alps in the summer. And just happened to notice online up 6 weeks before there was a thing called Trail High Forts, which was a trail race. That fine, looks fine. It's only about 21 kilometres. How hard can it be? And I didn't read the bit that said there was actually a 3,000 metre height gain as well. And my family were waiting for me. I said, yeah, look, it's a bit hilly. It'll probably be 3 to 4 hours. About 5.5 hours later, I sort of stumbled in when they'd been standing in this sort of slightly empty ski resort in the French Alps waiting to turn up. But, it's the sort of thing, it's a superb memory having done it, running over the top of the Alps through the snowfields in July. And I just keep looking for that sort of thing. And I've carried that through to triathlon. And I love the small local low-key events, Things like Bishampton Duathlon in March is brilliant because it's very low key, but it's actually quite a high standard. But if you look around and you're not obsessed with having an Ironman tattoo on your calf,
nope,
there are some really, really good, interesting places to go. So earlier this year it was the Brecon Beacons, which had been postponed for 2 years. And it was just one of those bizarre days where every bike had to have front and rear lights and you had to wear a fluorescent jacket because the fog was so thick you couldn't see much.
Was that your first middle distance?
No, it was my second. The first one I did was 2 years before that in the Yorkshireman in Ripon, which again was very similar. It was a quite very posh, stately home, so you swim up and down this ornamental river. But then you went out into the Yorkshire Dales, and it's the same sort of thing. It's all twists and turns and stuff like that. But the Wales one, just because it was so cold and wet.
Yeah.
And they've got a thing at the end they call the Iron Mountain, which is just a really about 4 kilometre climb. Got an average grade of about 9-10%. But in the fog, you couldn't see. So you hadn't got a clue where you were on the various switchbacks. You're just in the granny greer thinking, I've got
That's
to keep
quite
this
nice,
going.
actually.
Yeah, I guess so. But it was one of those ones that, and I have this sometimes, I don't think I'm unique. You get 2/3 of the way through the bike and you're freezing cold and you think, this is not going well. Can I do the run? And I think, I'm not sure I'm going to do it, but I'll just try the first lap. And once you've done the first lap, you can. But I quite like the slightly emotional roller coaster of these things. It's tough. Have I written a check my body can't cash here?
Yeah.
Look for those. So I just keep looking for anything like that. And if I see anything which is around, which has got a few hills and lumps or undulations, I'll do that every day over something flat.
Yeah, I can like relate to that a bit as well because I was already doing marathons and like when people do stuff for charity, they're kind of just going to find even a 10K sometimes or half a marathon. I'm like, well, I'll do that anyway. And I was going to do something for charity. So I was like, I need to find something a bit more extreme and a bit more out there. So I did some kind of research and I found in Ireland, they do an event called the Quadrathon.
Right.
It's run by Extreme North Events, and to this day is my favourite event in the world that I've ever done. And it's 4 marathons over 4 days, so you do one a day, and the routes of the 4 marathons all loop up, so you end up doing one big loop around peninsula in Ireland. So it's round Innishowen, and it's not flat. If anything, just the last day, the last one or the last half is pretty flat, but you're kind of thankful for that.
Yeah, you're ready for that then.
Yeah. You just want to get back. But I remember it just being amazing because it's pretty hilly, and you're running along the Atlantic coast, and so the views there are brilliant. And it just it gets a bit like I spent the whole of the last day just crying while I was running because I was so knackered.
Yeah,
and my heart rate was, I could feel it pretty high. And I was always a bit flat now at halfway, so I just kind of belted it from halfway all the way to the end, crying, heart rate through the roof. But that was the event that stuck with me.
Yeah,
because it was so unique, so different. So it's the friendliest event I've ever done as well. Something about Ireland.
Yeah, you get those. I mean, there's some classic ones in Wales. I mean, one if anyone wants a really interesting challenge is man versus horse.
Yeah,
in lightbulb Wells. It's actually the place I got my only ever sports trophy. In 2001, there's a team of 3 of us did the relay there, and it was the year when foot and mouth was about. And the reason that's relevant is it was postponed from the summer until the autumn to get rid of the foot and mouth barriers, which meant the great thing is all the really high-class athletes had buggered off the cross-country season. So 3 of us managed to get 3rd place and got this little trophy presented by some sort of slightly dubious participant of a reality TV program.
All right.
But again, putting that aside, it's the whole town of Drummond just comes out for people. And it's 3 legs through these various hills, and it's just epic. And having the horses blasting past you and the ground sort of shakes, and having high quality athletes to locals just sort of bumbling around is just really fun. You get to the end, and it's almost like a competition from the locals who can bake the most cake to put on the cake stand. And so you always come away sort of with no calorie deficit at all. But I just happened to see it and think I want to do that, and it's the way I tend to do it now. I look for something which looks interesting or quirky or lumpy or an area I haven't been to I want to go to.
Yeah.
And as long as it's accessible, it's affordable, and it isn't going to damage, put too much demands on the family, we'll do it.
Yeah. That's pretty. Yeah, it's pretty good. I kind of prefer that than just doing the boring races you just said. I was even reading books. I decided not to do this, and I haven't obviously done this stuff. But when you read books on people doing ultramarathons, like the crazy ones in the States, like Western States 100, and stories of people pushing their bodies so hard that they end up going blind when they're running and things like that, and collapsing on the road. So I think I might just not do those things. Yeah, I
mean, I know a few ultra runners, and they are the maddest people out there.
Yeah,
they are absolutely. I mean, in terms of hardcore commitment, it's just unbelievable, but it's just mind-boggling.
They've got minds of steel.
Yeah,
it's crazy. There's just nothing that's going to stop them at all.
No, totally.
It's pretty mad. But luckily Triathlon kind of solved that.
It has. I mean,
issue anyway.
There's still a big brand issue. Not brand issue. I mean, if you want to do a big brand race, fully boots, I'm sure it's a great experience to go somewhere. But it's a shed load of cash. And I look at some of them and think, why? I was on holiday in Nice a while back, and the Nice trial, the cycle course looks brilliant up in the hills. And then they come back to do the run course, and there's a long promenade in Nice, pancake flat. And they do about 4.5 loops of the promenade. And I'm thinking it's a shed load of long way to go to run up and down by the sea for 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
And I remember I heard one guy being interviewed, and he said whoever painted the lines on it had been dropping paint along the way. He said by the 3rd loop he was just sick of seeing these little paint drops go back and forward. And it's, I'm sure it's a great event and all that sort of stuff, but it just doesn't float my boat.
No, I mean you can understand why they have to do that, because there might be safety reasons or whatever, or it's better for the spectators to see. I know, because they close, especially in Ironman, they close all the roads with the bike.
Yeah.
So that I love that part of it, because there's no chance of, there still is a chance of being run over, because some of them don't listen or read the signs, but it's much safer. But yeah, it can get a bit monotonous on the run, can't it? It's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I've got 2 more laps of this. And
Exactly
that was
the same thing.
And
Yeah.
that was hellish. And sometimes I'd rather be where you said, where you're going up these switchbacks, but you cannot see how many more there are.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, the unknown is kind of bliss sometimes, you know.
Yeah, totally.
So it was like, so what then kind of got you into, so how did you find out about the sessions in the first place? Because you started to come to the swim sessions, didn't you?
Yeah, well, so my daughter saw you coaching and got in touch.
Because you were already swimming at Perd as well.
I was
weren't
always
you?
swimming at Perd as well anyway. I was a member there, just swimming in 2 or 3 times a week. And
Mm.
I was doing sort of fairly unstructured programs. So I'd swim a couple of times a week. I'd go out on the bike at the weekend and I'd do a bit of running. And it was,
Mm.
so I did a bit of everything, but nothing with any great focus. And every so often I'd enter a local tri or a local duathlon. And we did the swimming for a couple of months.
Mm.
And I could see the benefit and the improvement there. And I think having had the experience of having a really good coach in the past who I responded well to, but having a very clear plan what you're going to do, and you just get on and do it. You don't have a great negotiation, and it's not a great rah-rah. You just say, this is what you're doing, go do it.
Yeah.
Trust me, it'll work, and you just crack on. And so we thought, well, we'll move into the training mode and give it a go. I think the first couple of months were a bit of a shock with the number of double days and that sort of stuff, and you have to shuffle things around a bit, but it's sort of settled. I mean, I've got to say, I think bizarrely, a real benefit for me of COVID was I've been working from home a shed load more than I ever used to.
Mm.
So the ability to actually fit stuff in is better. Having said that, now when I travel with work, wherever I go, I know which hotel I'm going to use because it's got a gym or it's near a running route or there's a swimming pool I can use. And you just build your routine.
Wherever you go, you said, I scout out every area I'm at. I know exactly where the pools are, what the times are, where I can train.
Yeah.
And it's like perfect. That's exactly what I do as well.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm going somewhere new, the first question I ask is, where's the swimming pool?
Yeah.
How close is it?
Yeah, I mean, for this sort of stuff, I don't put a lot of time into spontaneity. You know, occasionally you might be lucky, but the reality is if I have to stay in some sort of Premier in the back and beyond, if I know there's a swimming pool down the road and I can get in there between these times and they're okay for you to use hand pads, I'll go and do it.
Yeah.
It just means I'm making better use of the time.
Yeah, no, that is good. Because a lot of the thing is just keep the consistency going of training and not having massive blocks of time where you just can't do anything.
Yeah.
Because I've worked with people before where it's like, right, I've got a week now, I can't do anything because I'm going away with friends or something. And it's like, okay, you can't do anything at all. No. Like, all right, then that's a bit challenging.
Yeah,
then.
no, I can get that.
Because a lot of the time they probably could carve out even half an hour a day, 45 minutes a day to just tick things by. But a lot of people kind of struggle to keep the consistency there and just do something. Especially in triathlon, we do. I don't plan in rest days.
Yeah,
you can take them like if you feel like you need them and stuff, but we don't plan them in as such because like tomorrow for you will be just an easy bike.
Yeah.
Today's a more challenging day because you've just done the 10k at Brecon. Is it Brecon?
The Hereford 10k.
The Hereford, sorry, yeah. The Hereford 10k, and then we've got a swim session later.
Yeah. Which
it's not just easy swimming, so it's like a bit of a
bit of a push.
Yeah, it's going to end a bit faster. So yeah, you don't really need to have days off planned in. And if you do, then like that, I don't know that because you know your body a lot better than me.
I mean, the idea of a forced break really it doesn't suit my mentality. I like to have the plan, and I gotta say, when I book to go on holiday, I'm always looking to: is there a gym I can use? Is there somewhere I can run? I'm straight onto Strava to see who's been there recently and what running routes they use. But I've had some brilliant times out of that. Go on city breaks quite a bit, and I remember running in Rome about 6:30 on a Sunday morning, and there's no one about. They can run around all the sites, do 2 laps of the Colosseum, just because it's a big circle, and off you go. And for me, that's a big part of my life is to keep that stuff going, just somewhere interesting or different.
Yeah, no, that's really good because it can get a bit boring seeing the same things every day.
Yeah,
leaving your house, going down the same road, and it's like, some people just can't do it. But some people do it for years and years and years, and they're absolutely fine with it. It's kind of soul destroying in a way, I find.
It is. I mean, I guess we've all got our favourite routes, and we chop and change them as best we can.
Yeah. We'll take this turning. We'll take this different turning this run just to make it a bit different.
Well, you say that, it's amazing how much is out there. When I first moved to the area, I bought a ordnance survey map, sent it on where my house is. You can order them. And the amount of things I found there by running on footpaths and bridle paths, which I found out I didn't know existed. And even now, when I'm cycling on the gravel bike, I'll find something I didn't know was there. It's only about 4 miles from home.
Yeah.
And you go down it, and suddenly you're down something you'd never seen before.
Yeah.
You know, I found one earlier this year, which it takes you down from the A38 onto the riverbank just near Upton. And halfway down, it turns into cobbles. So obviously it was originally an old cobbled cart track from the main road down to the river.
Okay.
But you're suddenly cycling down cobbles in the middle of this field, which is just really weird.
Yeah.
But it's just using the local map to look for some variety and some things to spark it up. Because I get bored with the same route, and I've got this rule that I can't come back in on the same road I went out on.
Oh, okay. So no out and backs.
No. Well, even down to, I don't want to do even the 30 yards from my house to the main road. I've got to go around the other way or something else. It's almost like a failure. I'll give in occasionally, but out and back is an absolute failure.
See, I don't mind. I do quite a lot of out and backs actually. A lot of the sessions on, like, especially when you're running off the bike, a lot of, I get set them. I don't know if I've set them for you guys as well. Is where you would run out for say 20 minutes. Easy, turn around and run fast back, or just as long as it's like a negative split, and then whatever time you've got left over, just run easy, I don't know, around a car park or something or wherever. But I kind of like it because it gives you a fixed point of where you can. I don't know, but no, I get that, and a lot of the time I don't want to. If I'm at home, it's like, I really have to just drive somewhere to run somewhere different and then drive back. Yeah. But it's like then I've got to drive. And use fuel and even more time. And
I think so, but I think we're lucky. If you look around where we live in Worcester, there's just so many options you can go. You can run. I live south of Worcester. I can be out the other side, north of Worcester, in under an hour.
Yeah.
And you can run the entire way up the riverbank from where I live, right up to the north of Worcester. So you don't touch roads at all. And for me, being able to get off the roads, because I'm not a fan of the roads, if I can do a muddy path.
Yeah.
But doing that and taking it to different places is just brilliant.
Yeah. No, that's pretty good. So we'll touch back on the swimming, because I'm interested. So what do you think? So when the kind of the moment came where you kind of got the pushing back and what it actually meant, what do you think did you think it was just repetition of doing it and it finally clicked, or do you think there was something particular which helped you understand it and kind of get it?
I think it was actually largely repetition and keep being told you're still not doing it. And if I'm honest, I couldn't tell you whether I just forgot to take my arm out and kept going and thought, oh, that worked. Or I'd like to say I was trying something a bit different and being more creative, but it just, it was one of those moments, but the moment you did it, it felt different. And I thought, okay, I sort of get that now.
Yeah.
It'd been helpful I got 9 months ago when you first said it, but that's another matter. But
it doesn't happen like that, does it?
I don't think it does. And I think if I'm honest, partly I think it's about range of movement. I mean, one of the things I did find when I started swimming a lot is my range of movement, my shoulders was really tight. And it's still quite tight, to be honest.
Because you used to move with your shoulders as you swam.
Yeah, totally. And it has taken a while to get that looser and stronger. And I think some of the strength work, we don't do strength work out of the pool, but with the pads, you don't need to do strength work out of the pool.
So we do a lot of strength work, probably more than most of the people, but we do it within each sport. Yeah. So it's all in the pool.
Yeah. And I think that's made quite a difference in terms of strength and mobility of my shoulders. I've also this year put a lot more time into doing things like yoga at home to try and improve the flexibility, and that's really helped as well.
Yeah.
Certainly as you get a little bit older, it helps give you that bit of resilience. But I think the thing I've probably noticed most in the last few weeks, which I think has led to that, is that better range of movement. And I think with that, more confidence to go at a slightly higher cadence and pace. Because I was always quite reserved with it.
Yeah, because I remember that session, the one last week, it was like, okay, we're going to try and just do, because the movement is looking is looking okay. But I wanted to speed up a bit. I wanted a bit of a higher cadence. And the cadence, so we were doing, was it a 1 length fast, 1 length back, or 15 meters? Yeah, or 15 meters fast, one of the two.
Yeah.
And then I was watching it, I was thinking, it's got that now.
Yeah.
That looks pretty good. Because you increased the cadence, but you were still pushing all the way back.
Yeah.
And I was like, that actually looks pretty good.
Yeah.
So was that the time when you kind of got it?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's interesting things like pace and cadence. I do have to push myself to improve it. I guess I'm always a psychological thing. I'm always a little bit reserved because I want to make sure I can get to the end of the session without dying totally. Or ideally, you want to die at the very last second so you've done it. And I've certainly with the swimming particularly, I think because it's been quite an unusual, for my body, quite an unusual movement pattern. To get comfortable that my shoulders just aren't going to burn out after 5 minutes. It's taken a while.
Yeah.
And it's actually interesting. I think swimming's one of those ones. It's taken longer to get to have a really hard session. So I can have a hard session on running now, dead easy. I know what to do, and I can beast myself and be knackered at the end. Same on the bike, either on the turbo or on the road. If I know I've got a hard session, I know what to do.
Yeah.
And I know I'll come back suitably sort of knackered. Swimming's been harder. Swimming's probably the one I've always walked away thinking I've had a hard session there, but not. I probably had something left, but didn't know where it was or how to use it. So
yeah,
I'm noticing myself a bit more breathless now in the last few weeks, and I think it is just that mindset of how hard can you push yourself, particularly if it's something you're not overly familiar with.
And it's a really interesting point, and I'm seeing this a lot with different people as well, who I'm coaching or come to the sessions. It's because often the time with running and cycling, it's in a way it's easier to put an effort in. Right, I'm going to go fast for whatever. It's not the same in the water and when you're swimming, because if without doing all the pre-work, which is been a year plus for you, and you've only just got here now, which is pretty normal in my experience. Without doing all the pre-work of, right, you're swimming now how I want you to swim, you're doing the right things. Now we can add in, let's do really hard efforts, but still doing what you're doing. If it takes someone who's quite new into it or new to the method of how we're swimming, if we say, right, swim as fast as you can for a length, they will just look like a fish out of water and splashing everywhere, and none of that energy will go into making them faster.
I think that's the big difference in swimming. If you haven't got the technique, just like an egg beater in the water, your arms are thrashing everywhere and there's water flying everywhere.
Yeah,
but you ain't going nowhere.
No, there's more energy going sideways than there is going forward, and so it's a very interesting thing because a lot of people, if they're not at the right kind of stage of development, if you just say go faster, they can go slower, but just splash more.
Yeah.
And because they're not confident enough or haven't yet got the ability to put all that extra force output it in the right way, which is why we spend so much time with these pads on, and straight arm out of the front, push down, push back with the bent arm, and all the way back, is to get that kind of movement so familiar. Because when you go faster, you still want to do the whole movement, but just push harder through it, and it will kill your arms.
Yeah,
your arms really hurt, don't they?
Yeah.
And what you tend to see is people push back half the distance back and then come out straight away to get in faster.
Yeah. So
they're like doing a form of doggy paddle in a way.
Yeah, I recognise that. Definitely been there.
And so it's really interesting as well, because a couple of people recently have started to get to that point as well, where they get to the end of the length and their faces are just a bit more red, and they're just panting a little bit more. And I'm like, you're starting to get it now.
Yeah, no, I've noticed the panting a bit more. It'll be interesting actually next year when we start taking that open water to see how that feels. It is different with the wetsuit, and it is different in the open water.
We try and make it as similar as possible with the pool boys and everything.
Yeah. But it's getting used to having that and the confidence to keep pushing. So, certainly last year is probably the first year in open water. I've been happy to give as many thumps as I've been getting in the washing machine. But I'm still.
Yeah, you even got a thump from me.
Well, you swam over the top of me. in that Chuk, felt pretty close in that Tewkesbury event.
I kind of came up behind you, and then I was like, kind of just on one side, just with your feet right there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I kind of want to go around him the other way. So then I just went over the feet and then up the other side. And afterwards I thought, that was Chris.
The thrashing one. But yeah, but no, it'll be interesting to see how it translates, because it's a different sort of skill set again, doing that in the mass starts and in the groupings, and then learning the dark arts of spotting and sighting, which with dodgy eyesight is quite challenging.
It's sometimes you can't even see if the sun's in your eyes.
Yeah.
How do you know where to go?
Yeah.
It's like you just have to guess. It's awful.
Well, I've had a kayaker stop once and say, actually, it's that way you're going, not that.
I love that. It can be quite scary sometimes.
It is, and I think once you get over the fear of it, it's brilliant. But it's probably one of the hardest things in tri. I think the first time you go open water with lots of other people, and you haven't got lines on the pool and you haven't got the side, and it's just a bit scary. But if you can embrace that, it's one of the best parts, I think. Yeah,
it is. And again, just with repetition and practice, you just start to get more comfortable. You kind of form more of an ownership over your swimming and a sense of control. Is that I know that I can push that water back, and I know I can do it if there's waves everywhere or not.
Yeah,
I can. I've got a reliable engine now. My paddles are there. My hands are there. You can kind of click and go and level up to that kind of thinking where you just think, oh no, I know I can swim now, and I know I can put the force in if I'm in the pool or outside. But it just takes so long to get that and keep improving it, and just so much repetition.
Yeah,
that it's probably why not many people are that good at it in triathlon. Because they want the quicker results, and they kind of go, and everyone's like, every triathlete you kind of speak to, it's like, no, I can't swim, I'm rubbish at swimming. But maybe that's a reason for it.
Yeah, maybe. Do you think that's going to start changing now, with more kids coming in as triathletes rather than coming to triathlete as I used to be a runner, or I used to be a cyclist, or I used to be a swimmer? They get a more balanced approach to it.
I hope so.
Because I see some of the kids who train with us on the track, and they're lethal on the track. Translate that through the same thing, you can see a very, very different sport ahead, because virtually everyone we train with now is like myself. I used to do X and then got into it, rather than I've actually been building that capability from very early on.
This is what is like really exciting for me. It's what keeps me. I like to say broke and honest, because I'm not chasing the money at all. I'm chasing making a difference, and I used to.
You wouldn't mind being rich and honest though if it happened.
Oh, it would be a bonus, and I would use it. I would, everyone would. I would use it in a good way as well. It wouldn't be like, oh, I'm just going to spend it on a Lamborghini. I couldn't care less. But yeah, it's really that really kind of lights the fire in me even more as well. Is that I love working with adults and helping them but there's another dimension to working with kids who are more like a blank canvas, and they've not. So I've got a group. They're about 12, just heading on to 13, and some of them come and track, and they're flying around. Like I don't know if I can name them here, but one of them, we want to talk about that big, and she absolutely flies around. She's always wearing pink. Yeah. And I think I remember the first few times she came, when she overtook adults, you kind of give her a glance and look. So. Who is that? Yeah. Where did she come from?
This blur of pink goes past.
Yeah,
and not even trying.
No. So I used to swim teach a lot of those when I did swim teach, but I didn't want to lose that talent, because some of them I'm like, you've got a lot of promise there. So I set up a team for them to join after they'd passed the Learn to Swim framework, where they can just stay in that team now. Until whenever they want to leave, or when they're 18 or whatever. And what I did with you guys, with the how I'm getting you to swim, I'm doing the same with them. And the running is the same. So it'd be really interesting to see how they develop, because they haven't hit puberty yet. Yeah. And if they're doing this through their pubescent years, and they come out the other side, and if one or two of them are still doing it then the world is their oyster. Like, there's nothing stopping some of them from being pro, I think. And it's just really exciting, because they're good. Yeah.
But they're hitting the sport early and doing the learning early, rather than unpicking habits.
Yeah.
Because you must hear virtually all the people you coach who are adults, I did this before. You've always been cycling, always been swimming, or something, but...
Mm.
And that's fine, it's the nature of the sport, but I think the encouraging that people are coming into as a sport early,
Yeah.
and things like Go Try make a difference there is really important.
Yeah, it's really, really huge. Because a lot of the time, because mentioned Brett earlier, like he says that he believes that if you've got, I don't know, a pro runner who is amazing on the track, and then you kind of take them, bring them into try, and says, okay, they're really good at running. Let's just teach them out. Let's just teach them how to ride a bike and swim. They're not a triathlete. They're just a runner who's been dragged in and kind of like born to be. It's not kind of the all-round thing that is a true triathlete. And I kind of see that. It's like when Jorgensen was the same. Like she won a lot. I think she won a lot of races because as long as she was remotely near them on the run, it's like, oh, Gwen's won.
No, it's interesting when you see at the very top level and start setting courses because they want good competition with names, but you'll get a course which is set for someone like an Alex Yee, who is a runner turned and still is absolutely blisteringly outstanding.
Yeah,
but hasn't got that mix of skills. But it's very much that if you're not off the bike a good 3 minutes ahead of him, you might as well just sit there and give up then.
Yeah. It's weird how it's kind of the dynamics changing with the sport a little bit as well, isn't it? And it's like, I mean, I'm not a fan of the Super League stuff, the really short stuff, and they repeat through the 3 elements all the time. I mean, personally, I like the endurance. I like to see the endurance side of it. Who's really fitter?
Yeah.
Not like who's there. It's like who's faster, who can explode and for like half an hour, or whatever. I like the added challenge of, it's an endurance sport. They're kind of losing the endurance in a way. It's kind of a different sport.
I think it is, but it's a horses for courses thing. I mean, the one bit I really used to enjoy watching and still enjoy watching is the relay, which is ultimate explosion. But actually, just the team bit just looks fun.
Yeah.
It fits nicely into an hour's telly, so it sort of works and.
It's good to watch. That's why they do it.
It is good watching, whereas, quite frankly, watching an endurance race, unless you're really, really, really interested in it, is uber dull.
You're not going to do it, are you?
No, you're not.
You just, I mean, look, how many people actually watch the Ironman on Facebook Live, is it, when it's on the World Champs? Not many.
Not many, particularly when the bike leg and there's just one big peloton.
yeah. For 4 hours. Yes, enjoy, guys.
Won't even show you the scenery.
Yeah, so it's clear why they're doing it. I mean, but for me, is because I train as well. Like, I like the monotony of the training and the boredom of it. So I'm like, I want the long stuff. Give me that. I don't want. Their sprint triathlons is still quite long, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're at least an hour, unless you're an absolute super speedy. But
I mean, I must say, sprints were a brilliant intro to try. I mean, the first 3 or 4 I did were sprints, so local ones, pool-based. I wouldn't rush to a pool-based one now, but I'm really pleased I had the opportunity to do it. And and it was very inclusive. You can turn up in any old knackered bike and just give it a go. And people were phenomenally supportive and tolerant and helpful, which I thought was, for the local level, is really, really impressive.
Yeah, no, that is really good. It's like with the. Because, at the minute we're looking into the setting up a Go Try for something for the kids team to get into as well, and it will be open for adults. It's not confirmed yet, but I'm working on it. And it will literally be a quathlon, so you'll swim and then run, but they're short. So even for the adults, it'll be 300 meter swim, 3K run, and it's such a low key event. It doesn't matter what as long as you're decent. It doesn't matter what you wear. Yeah, you can get changed for 5 minutes, 10 minutes if you want between the 2 legs, and there's no. That's the idea of it. Is just it's just so simple and it's welcoming to anyone, and you can literally have never run before. You can just walk it if you want. It doesn't matter. But it's so vital because the feeling of running straight after a swim is a bit weird when you're new to it, and it takes a bit of getting used to. So that is quite vital in the kind of the development process to have those opportunities. And because we used to do that, especially through when before you had to go back to the office, we would do more run swim and swim runs, and that's quite it's a bit, when you start doing that, was that a bit like, whoa, this is a bit different?
It is a bit different, yeah. It is a bit different, very much so. I mean, you get used to doing sort of bike runs. You do the brick sessions that way, but the swim mix is very different.
Yeah,
very different indeed. I think I think it's beholden on all of us in the sport to try and give people the chance to come in at a low cost, easy level. It's very easy to become quite an elitist. If you've got sort of $5,000, you can come and do it, but otherwise, just don't bother. And that's just going to kill the sport.
yeah.
It's got to become accessible. It's got to become sort of much more equal.
I mean, it's £5 to enter a Go Try.
Yeah.
And it's just it's over in an hour,
Yeah.
if that. So I think that's really good for ticking that box, because I'm the same. I used to be kind of associated with said kind of communities and whatever, where it can get a bit elitist and I just didn't want. It actually drove me away for a bit.
It does, and look at myself. The last thing triathlon needs is more white middle-aged men on it. There's no shortage of people like me, but there's an increasing number of women, which is great to see. There's an increasing number of younger people there. Still quite white and pale, and there's more opportunity there. But I think it is a community who could become really inclusive and really supportive of people, regardless where they are, just because it's fun and a bit different.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to do to become more diverse, more inclusive. A lot, and not that at all. But just having a BAME poster, I'd hate that term anyway, and just advertise your event on that. It just isn't cutting it.
Yeah,
it's just like, oh, we'll just make it look like we're doing something to be inclusive, but you're not actually being inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've been involved in this subject quite heavily in the past job when I worked for National Trust, because similarly, National Trust is seen as a white, middle-aged, privileged kind of club in a way, isn't it? Where actually we were working a lot with consultancy teams and stuff behind the scenes to kind of actually, how do we actually make this more diverse and appeal to a wider audience? And the Birmingham team, for example, was amazing for that. We did loads of work with the local communities there, and in triathlon we need to do the same thing. But it starts with people like us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just and with me, I'm very aware of the environment which I am kind of setting at the track, at the pool sessions, and if I'm not setting an environment or creating an environment where anyone could come in, enjoy it, and thrive, then I'm failing as one of my core duties as a coach in a way. There's so many times I've seen that failed elsewhere, and I've got real life examples of that, and it's like, so anything to do to kind of help that is like, I know initially I wasn't sure if we'd be able to have the kids with the adults at the running track on a Friday, but it works brilliantly.
Yeah. It's a bit embarrassing at times, but apart from that, but they are awesome, absolutely awesome.
Yeah, and I'm really happy how it turned out. Like the parents even join in now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something that's like really like important to me as well. Is I do not I know that because I am white and I am male and I am from a Western country, I am privileged. Yeah. I'm very aware of that. And I don't like the fact, really, but it just is. But then being aware of it is the first step, isn't it? And then you can kind of have a different perspective on things. And
very much so. I mean, if you own your privilege, and then you make sure you're putting the ladder down to help people up.
Yeah. And you can, if you realise, oh yeah, I'm in a privileged spot, maybe more privileged than you are, and that might then change my actions, or you might help them. You might just be more understanding of them, whatever. But yeah, that's huge. A lot, not enough people kind of get that, do they? I think.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about philosophy now, and life and everything.
Well, that's what sport is. I mean, it's not sport; it's philosophy. But it's a major part of people's lives. Certainly for me, I wouldn't be able to work the way I work if I didn't have something like this as a total contrast, which really interests and excites me, and it gives me different things to do and meet a whole range of different people.
Yeah.
I can very easily be stuck behind a desk in an office with people who look like me, working with me, doing the same thing, and it doesn't give you that perspective, and it doesn't give you that change of view of the world.
Yeah, it's like there's I was listening to an album the other day, and there's this guy was a rapper, and he was talking about that the people closest to me on most subjects we don't agree, but instead of arguing and whatever, in the lyrics are in diversity we find beauty. I'm like, that is beautiful.
Yeah.
Coming from a rapper as well, who's they know what the scene is normally like when people rap about just absolute nonsense. But yeah, like if you surround yourself with people who are just going to go yes, and just agree with anything you say, that's not really that great, is it?
No, not at all. And again, I'm in the place. I think I think this will extend my quality of life and hopefully even extend my life. I've got no problem. I'm getting slower. I think I said I did duathlon earlier this year, and I was second in my age group, which is great until you realise there were only two in my age group. I'll take it. But you know what? If in 20 years' time I'm doing it on an e-bike, I'm quite chilled with that as well, because it's given me an opportunity to really invest in myself, and from that others in a way I wouldn't have had otherwise. And I think that's the thing we miss with sport. I think when either schools don't get kids engaged or they get really busy when they leave and can't keep going. I think the quality of the support to the mental health as well as your physical health can't be understated.
Well, that's the thing. Like, we already ascertained that we're not doing it to speed up all the time, faster and faster. We're doing it for those bigger reasons of quality of life, coping with mental health, coping with mental illness, and just putting yourself in a better position where you're not going to pick up these illnesses which you might have otherwise done, and you just don't want to be taken by life and all these bad, the more, if you're fit and healthy, you're just at so much better point of just looking after your health and warding off future issues.
Or have a better chance anyway.
Yeah, just a better chance to fight whatever comes your way, just because your body's just more prepared for it. I think that's often overlooked, and especially what drove me away as well, because I was part of the when you race for GB and the age group stuff, and it just it was horrible. I was like, I'm getting away from this, and it ruined the sport for me for like a couple of years. And then but it gave me a really different perspective, and then you come into it with kind of a fresh perspective and go, okay, now I'm doing this for me, and to benefit me, and I do not want to be involved in anything that's kind of counter to that, or anything remotely toxic or weird. If you get those vibes, just go somewhere else. But which is and I think that kind of follows through into you guys who I coach, because you're all so different as well, but you're all like decent people. You're all nice people.
I think you'll stick with the coach if it sort of works for you, and if it doesn't, it's right to move and change. There is no one size fits all, and it's got to click in whatever way it does.
And that's it's no problem when people kind of you can never hold anything like that personally. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It just is or it isn't. And then even after, people are not going to say forever either. That's just normal, because things change or they just want to do something different. Absolutely fine. I'm like, you got to do what's right for you. I understand. I'm coached as well. So I get it. But yeah. We've been talking for an hour and 8 minutes.
Blimey. It was quick, didn't it?
I know. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we've covered that. I mean, looking forward to the season ahead.
You've got Northumbrian.
Got the Northumbrian.
I call it Brian.
The Brian, so it's swim in Kielder water. One time in the year you're allowed to swim there, because it's the reservoir for the entire northeast of England.
Oh, don't wee in it.
Yeah, you're not allowed to wee in it. Well, as you know, there's only two types of people. Those who wee in the wetsuit and those who lie about it.
I'm the first.
You have to confess that. But do that, and then it's a brilliant bike ride up into the Northumbrian Scottish borders, all lumps and bumps, and then the runs entirely off-road around the reservoir, which again is undulating and different. So that'll be good, and then a few other bits and pieces on the way.
You kind of you're selling it to me, because I've obviously, when you first mentioned it, I googled it. I was like, that looks pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. It's Steve Cram runs it. Same as goes to City running. His lad's a big cyclist and the right and did the first one last year quite low key. This one again slightly bigger, but still quite low key, because it's a pain in the backside place to organise things, because
imagine the health and safety aspects as well.
So they're just growing it slowly, but just I remember camping up there when I was really young. It's a midgy heaven, which is a bad side, but it just looks really, really interesting and fun. But up till then, I've got other muddy, any race with the word muddy in the title, I'm usually in it, so that'll keep it going.
Muds and hills,
do a couple more duathlons. I want to get a half marathon in sometime, but I think I just found one beginning of April, which is a trail one.
Okay,
Which should probably just about fit in before we get into other stuff.
Yeah, I'll make a note of the date afterwards.
Well, I'll have a look at it. It's got to juggle a few more, but yeah, it's all let's say taking me to interesting different places to have a bit of fun, really.
That's
which
brilliant.
is really what it's all about.
It is, yeah, and it's easily forgotten. We train for us. We should enjoy the training. Just do it for you, and then whenever you get to a race, you're doing nothing different to what you do when you're training. Now you just got people clapping for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It is a bit different. It's hard not to get sucked into it. I'm sure today, the last kilometre and a half, I was running next to a guy, and both of us trying to speed up and not getting very far. But it gives a bit, and that bit of competition is quite fun. Or how you deal with adversity. You have the puncture a few kilometres out, and you're doing the juggle of do I change it or do I just wheel in?
Yeah.
Or your chain breaks, so you end up having to push up the hill. But these are little adversities. But I think when everyone comes together and it's got a bit of atmosphere, it does add a bit of an edge. But it's quite a fun edge.
There's a buzz there, isn't there?
There is a buzz
and it
there.
just kind of, it can be like a bit of a drug sometimes, can't it?
Well, I think that one we did in Tewkesbury in the summer.
Oh, brilliant.
Really short sprint event, boiling hot day, great buzzy atmosphere. Then everyone just sat on the lake afterwards. It was scorching. It was like 30 degrees. It was just a nice sense of community and good atmosphere that day.
Yeah, I still got really good memories of that. I remember being sat in that lake afterwards, just thinking, I do not want to leave this lake. This is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's about 34, 35 degrees, and it was just...
And the lake was cool.
It was beautiful, wasn't it?
It was just so nice. It was so comfortable there, weren't we?
But that was a classic of a good club run race. Cost not a lot to get in. Very friendly, committed people doing it and volunteered. Everyone who did it, no one was a dick. Because triathlon does attract its fair share of dicks, to be fair.
Yeah, what I spoke about earlier.
But no one was a dick, and everyone just enjoyed themselves. It was a good memory.
I've got a good memory of that. We should do that again. If
it's a good one.
They do that again.
Very good one.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time. It's been good to chat.
My pleasure.
I think it sounded like a good podcast to me.
Well, let's just see how it comes out anyway. But
we'll see the feedback from people.
But if you fancy the Northumbrian, we'll get yourself down for it.
Yeah, if anyone listening fancies Northumbrian, now I've called it Brian, let us know.
Yeah.
And if you are still listening, thank you. Or if you've listened to most of it, you can help a lot by doing all the basic boring stuff that you know anyway, like and subscribe and all that stuff. The idea is it'd be great if this podcast can start to reach a new audience, or people that don't know about, aren't already in the community with us, or don't even live in Worcester, for example. So trying to use the power of the internet to do that would be amazing. But no, thank you, Chris.
No problem at all.
And maybe hopefully every couple of weeks we'll get a podcast on at the minute. So that is the aim for the new year.
Cool.
See
you in the pool later.
See you later.